I must have had about 250 pages of poetry, and it ended up about 150,
Yeah.
140, maybe 140 with the of text, maybe 135 with the text, and then all of the filler and all that. So I left out a lot, and I left out a lot of pieces, and not that I wanted them all in there,
Yeah.
but I kind of kept in there what I wanted. I kept in there what I wanted, trying to take the book in the direction that my poetry is going in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's kind of going in a different way, because Miles Davis is my mentor.
Yeah.
And Miles is my mentor and creative cultural mentor. And Miles was always changing the way he played and the kind of music he played. And for me, it's not that I do this. I'm thinking about, I want to change. It's just the way I am. I had to settle for that. I've had to settle for the fact that my natural way of moving is trying to move into different directions. I mean, that's the way my mind works. Whether that's good or bad is another thing. But it's always moving like that. And it's always moving like that because I'm always curious about stuff.
I'm trying to follow a track here, and I'm hearing something I'm really interested in your work anyway, but I'm seeing it play out, listening to you talk about it. So, of course, the old adage, the page is like canvas, things happen on it like art. But what I'm hearing from you is deeper than that. It's got to do with maybe a supportive structure that comes up through innovation rather than formality. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate?
Yeah. See,
okay.
I think that let's take my life. My father was a great baseball player in the old black Negro leagues. Mm-hmm. And I kind of grew up between Mexico and St. Louis, and Puerto Rico and St. Louis, and then went other places because he played the whole year round.
Yeah.
So I grew up in all these different cultures, which at one point was a problem for me because I always went back to St. Louis to go to school, and at one time I had learned how to speak Spanish and all that. And my father had salsa. He was bringing in machito, all these great Latin bands into the house, and I was hearing them. Yeah. At the same time, my mother was playing Count Basie and Charlie Parker and Billy Eckstein. My grandmother loved gospel. She loved spirituals. She went to the church every Sunday. So I grew up in a household that was full of all of these different influences, and so for me, it was normal. Mm-hmm. It was normal to hear all of these different things in my life growing up. So, growing up, and these different things. So by the time I came to poetry, and as I said to you earlier, I taught myself to write formalistically, all those forms I mentioned earlier. But then I realized that a form is just a form. You have to pour poetry into it. You have to pour poetry into a form. You can write da-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da. You can write an iambic line, but you have to put poetry into that iambic. You got to put poetry into a sestina or a villanelle. It can't be just technically sestina or villanelle with 19 lines and 19 lines. You can repeat you pick 4 lines, you repeat it 4 times throughout the poem, and then you end it with an envoy that's got the buried in it, or the same thing with a sestina where you take the word, you do one word at the end of 6th line, and then you manipulate that all the way through. You have to have poetry, and the same thing with a sonnet, the same thing with a haiku or a tanka. So it has to be about, you have to innovate the form if you can. So I got tired of trying to do that. That's why I created that form that's in that book, in this book called 7-Elevens. Mm-hmm. 7-Elevens. I was trying to create a new form that was American based. What did 7-Eleven come out of? 7-Eleven comes out of my lived life of living in St. Louis, watching people play the dice. When I was growing up, you go in the corner. I didn't ever really play a lot of dice, but I watched all the older people, older men. Let's make it, it was men.
7,11.
Sitting on the corner, 7-11, you win. If you throw 7, you win on the first throw. You throw 11, you win. You throw snake eyes, you lose. So it's about a structure. But so I said, oh, that's interesting. And this came to light when I wrote that poem, Skulls Along the River, and I put that in there, that line. 7-11, you win at the game of dice. 7-11, you win. Snake eyes, you win the blues. Okay, so that was a long time ago. So I was thinking, I've been trying to think about an American form that I could probably help to create.
Yeah.
And so one day I said, 7-11, how would that be? So you do the 7-11, 7 lines, seven syllables, alternating 7 syllables, 11 syllables, 7 lines. If the first line is 7 syllables, then it's a 7. And if you do the 11, the first line is 11, and you do 11 lines, alternating 11, 7 syllables throughout, and then you can play with it.
Okay.
You can play with it. So I'm playing with that poem, but what's remarkable about that, there are a lot of young poets, people in St. Louis and New York, who are also doing 7-11s now. They're doing 7-11s as a form. A guy just did a whole book of them. I have them in the back. Chris King from St. Louis. He did a whole book of 7-11s. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. It's just kind of astonishing. But you have to innovate the formalistic things, concerns. You have to try to open it up. You have to open up the form.
Yeah.
I mean, we are Americans. I don't have anything against Europeans. I don't. But we are Americans. We are different from Europeans.
Sure.
We're different. Somebody says to me one day, oh, we're speaking English. I said, no, we're not. We're speaking the American language.
Yeah.
We're not speaking English. We're speaking the American language, the American version of English. I mean, it's not like the English speak English. It's like we speak here. And we have regionalisms. We have all of this. We have all of this all across the country. We have African Americans here. We have Native American Indians here. We have Native people here who have their own. I'm part Native. My parents are. On I'm on the Cherokee side. On my grandmother, I have full blood Cherokee. She's full blood Cherokee. So and then some French slipped in there somehow. And then Africans. So how am I supposed to deal with that culturally? For a long time I used to think, and I remember when my father said to me, I said, oh, I saw his mother, who was full blood Cherokee. And I'm looking at him, I said, oh, Grandma, I said, what is she? I said, she's a light-skinned black woman or white, what is she? He said, no, she's Cherokee. I said, what? She said, Cherokee. And all those movies about the native people, right? I swear to God, it scared me to death. I said, you mean we used to call them Indian. You mean she's an Indian? And I'm looking at the Hopalong Cassidy movies and all that, and the enemy were the Indians and all that. Oh, that's how we were brainwashed.
Yeah.
So I said, you mean she was Indian?
Yeah.
He said, yeah. I said, wow, that's kind of weird. I thought to myself, but over time I began to say, that's great. That's it's a great thing as you grow mature and grow older, and you begin to see. And I was very proud of it after a while. I was like, African, Native. You know what I mean? I'm of this place. So how do you express that? How do you express that in poetry? See, how do you formalistically and in terms of language, in terms of form and metaphor, image, how do you express that?
Beautiful.